4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
From the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Tuesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter X at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. I got Stu Kovacs. I got Moist Mike. We are rocking and rolling all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. How about ACC Media Days? They are underway. They got going yesterday. The Big Ten Media Days did start today. We'll get some audio from Paul Feinbaum on the future of USC now in the Big Ten, and also with him talking about Ryan Day and some things that Ryan Day did say today. But I think the ACC, not that it's a more fascinating conference, but what could come out of media days when you look at the ACC to the Big Ten, it's juicier in the ACC. Now, usually, I don't like litigious situations. I think legal manners are usually very, very boring. But when you have the two big brands still in the ACC of Florida State and Clemson suing the ACC, and we know that Florida State filed for their lawsuit about 7 months ago, and Clemson did follow this past March, I think it makes it interesting because Florida State's still in the ACC. Clemson's still in the ACC, and they're participating in the ACC, but with the pending lawsuit going on. So either two things could happen. One, people pop off and say things, which you don't usually expect. Or two, no one says anything because it's a legal matter. Now, we know Florida State has talked about this for a while. I actually remember it was after the college football season. Danny Cannell was on with us, and he did attend Florida State. And he was like, I'm sick of all the talk. Let's just see action. And I think a lot of us don't care about the legal side of it. A lot of us aren't like, okay, where are you going to go here? Where are you going to go there? And go through all the entire potential options, which we'll do. But I'm at a point where this has been talked about for so long now, and it feels like it's been talked about for so long with all these different conferences and teams changing conferences. As you know, Texas and Oklahoma about to debut in the SEC. You got the big brands of Oregon and USC going to the Big Ten, and many other changes when you factor in the Big Ten and in addition to the Big 12. But I'm at a point now where it's just like, all right, let me just know what the end result is. But the challenging part here is that the ACC has a newish media deal. So if Florida State and Clemson want to leave, not only do they have to buy out from the ACC, but then they also have to go get their TV rights. So we've talked about this before, and you'll read some different articles like, oh, there's opt-outs in 2027, but the deal's through 2036. And there's not a lot of clarity there, and that's why this is in a legal spot. But I read one article, it's going to cost Florida State potentially nearly like $500 to $600 million when you factor in terminating from the ACC early and then also getting your TV rights as well. But I'm trying to figure out what the end goal is. And I'll give you what the end goal is potentially right now, the quickest road for Florida State and Clemson. But if it goes down the quickest road, I do not think it's worth it for what they're doing right now. But if it goes down the longer road, then yes, it can be worth it for not only Clemson and Florida State. But before we get to that, let me play you the commissioner of the ACC, Jim Phillips. And I was not expecting him to come out swinging. Because usually when a commissioner speaks and there's a moment of contentious, situations developing or a legal situation, usually don't get a lot from the commissioner, right? Because the commissioner's like the one that represents the brand, that represents the ACC, and you expect him to be more buttoned up. Like when the Florida State AD speaks about this, he's trying to create noise. When Clemson speaks about this, they're trying to create noise. But they're doing so in a calculated measure from their lawyers and from their attorneys where it doesn't cross the line. But when you are like Roger Goodell, whenever he speaks and there's a legal manner, you get you get nothing. You know, when Gary Bettman, who comes on this show, and there's a pressing situation, it's you get nothing. But Jim Phillips actually gave you a little bit. And here was the commissioner of the ACC on Florida State and Clemson's lawsuits against the ACC.
We will fight to protect the ACC and our members for as long as it takes. We are confident in this league and that it will remain a premier conference in college athletics for the long-term future. These disputes continue to be extremely damaging, disruptive, and incredibly harmful to the league. We intend to continue to fight every day for the ACC and its members, and to do so in a way that I hope makes our membership proud. The ACC will remain a healthy and vibrant conference that competes at the highest level.
That last part to me, they will remain a healthy and vibrant conference. I don't expect him to say anything different, but with how this is going, I don't think that will remain true. And let's just compare it apples to apples. You look at who's comparable to the ACC. It's the Big 12. Now, the ACC hasn't lost Florida State or Clemson yet. It was almost better to lose your bigger brands earlier rather than later. Like the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma. When that happened, I remember I was doing shows on this network. Everyone was like, oh, rest in peace to the Big 12. The Big 12 is dead. Ding dong. The Big 12 is dead. It's over. But through proper leadership, the Big 12 scooped up other schools that aren't the 10 out of 10. They're not like the greatest schools, but they said, let's just pluck as many schools as we can because more schools probably will inevitably leave. And it's not like the Big 12 is the greatest conference in the world. The Big 12 is not the Big 10. It's not the SEC. But the Big 12 right now is healthy. There's a spot for the Big 12 where the Big 12 is in a spot where you're good, but you're not great. And as we've seen in sports, there's a lot of spots for good, but not great teams. The ACC, though, this is getting so nasty with Florida State specifically, and then also Clemson following, that I don't know how it plays out. I don't know when it plays out and when the final outcome is, but I do know what the final outcome will be. It's not a matter of if Florida State and Clemson are leaving the ACC. It's just when. And when that happens, since you already saw the Big 12 lose their two big brands and then replace them with a bunch of other schools, it's like, who's the ACC adding? Who are you now going to be able to add when two big brands leave? And you could argue, oh, maybe UNC is a bigger brand and you take Clemson out of it or things like that. You know, people have talked about that, the other conferences' desires, but you don't know what the Big 10 and the SEC is looking for. Because you would think from a football standpoint, yeah, Florida State and Clemson should be coveted by the Big 10 and the SEC. But so far in the reporting right now, the Big 10 and the SEC reportedly aren't interested in Florida State. Brett McMurphy had a whole article about this a week ago. And then it feels like the same sentiment right now. The Big 10 and SEC isn't really interested in Clemson either. And that's a big misnomer that I've been on for at least a year. Everyone thought the Big 10 and the SEC were just going to be like, welcome in, come join the haves. Because if you don't join this club, you're on the outside looking in. But it's not a free-for-all. The Big 10 and the SEC have already made moves. And it's not like they have a long list of teams that in the short future, in the immediate future, they're like, yeah, we want this school, that school, this school, that school, this school, that school, this school, that school. No. Like Notre Dame, right? That's the big one that people still want. That would feel like Notre Dame, if they did make a move to a conference, it would be full-time the Big 10. Unless they just want to dominate the ACC or dominate the Big 12 full-time. But I don't think that's going to happen. Then outside of that, Florida State and Clemson would be next up on my list. But you're seeing it right now. Maybe the Big 10 and SEC are playing poker in negotiations, but it doesn't seem like either have this great desire to go add Florida State or Clemson. specifically Florida State, which is alarming. And in the SEC, I guess I could kind of get it because you already have a Florida school in there. But you would think the Big Ten, if you really want to go toe-to-toe with the SEC, which you're capable of doing, and I still think the SEC is the preeminent conference in college football, but the only challenger is the Big Ten, then yeah, why wouldn't you try to go dive into Florida and get Florida State? And it seems like Clemson, it's like, okay, let's wait and see the other conference, what happens with Florida State, and then we'll think about Clemson. But outside of that, like, who else is really that attractive? Like, maybe Miami because of what they did 20 years ago? Maybe. If you want to tell me UNC, yeah, I guess potentially. But we're struggling to come up with 5 schools that the Big Ten and the SEC are really going to covet. So what happens if this is not just a bluff and the Big Ten and SEC, who right now do not look like they're desiring Florida State or Clemson, and I'll see if that's true and remains to be true when the legal matter does get taken care of, then where does Florida State and Clemson go? Because what's the point of this lawsuit if you're going to stay in the ACC? And can you imagine if Florida State and Clemson goes through all this legal mess and they jump through all these hula hoops to land in the Big 12? Like, that's not a move where if I'm a Florida State fan or a Clemson fan, I'm like, yeah, here we go. We're going from the ACC to the Big 12. That's like, so what? Like, yeah, right now I do think the Big 12 is a better conference than the ACC. And I guess Florida State and Clemson would try to take over the role that Texas and Oklahoma had, where you basically cater the conference around Florida State and Clemson. But let's be real, Oklahoma and Texas are much bigger brands than Florida State and Clemson. So you're joining a conference that's in a better spot than the one that you currently have, and I think has a better long-term future than what the ACC has when you look at the Big 12, but it's not like a rah-rah move that really sparks your fan base to be jumping up and down like fat kids in a candy store. And that's the thing to me that I would not get what Florida State and Clemson are doing if it just results in winding up in the Big 12. And it makes me raise the bigger question here. What is really the future of college football? And I think there's a few options on the table. One, you just go to one big super league where it's like 65 teams. And if you're one of the 65 teams, you're in. And if you're not, then you're in a different version of college football. I don't think that's the likeliest just because of how big the brands of the Big Ten and the SEC are. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't think it's number one on my list. Could you eventually see a lot of the ACC teams maybe go to the Big 12 and then it's 3 really power conferences and the ACC just disappears or gets condensed significantly? I guess. But it seems like we're at 5 Power 5 conferences a year ago, and now we're at the core 4 of the 4 major conferences, and there's already a separation there. It's the Big Ten, the SEC, and then it's okay, the Big 12 is better than the ACC, but there's still a separation between the Big Ten and the SEC from the Big 12. But it kind of feels like this is going in some capacity to 3. And it's not going to happen this year or next year. It may not happen until this ACC media rights deal expires. You know, depending on the opt-outs and then also 2036 when you know it expires. But it feels like you're going to the haves and the have-nots. But we thought the haves and the have-nots was a 2-3 split respectively. Now we know it's a 2-2 split. And it feels like it's going to be a 2-1 split, where inevitably the Big Ten and the SEC will still be functioning and function at a high level, and then it'll be everybody else, whether that's gelled into one conferences or a bunch of different conferences. But there is a clear distinction, and you'll see it in the college football playoff. And we had this discussion the other day. There's 12 spots up for grabs. 12. Right now, 5 are guaranteed to conference champions. So the Big Ten, the SEC, ACC, Big 12, and then the next highest ranked conference champion. But then when you look at the other 7 spots, who's getting in? And we talked about it yesterday. Maybe Notre Dame, and they're an independent. But outside of that, it's going to be Big Ten, SEC, Big Ten, SEC, and so on and so on. And maybe at best, and I think this is even optimistic, there could be an extra spot for one of either the Big 12 or the ACC, but probably not likely. Like, if it plays out where Florida State and Clemson, like one of those schools only has one loss at the end of the year, then maybe, and probably they get a spot in. Maybe even 2 losses at most. But in most years, if it remains in a 12-team format, it is going to be SEC and Big Ten taking the majority of the wild card spots, let's call them, if not all of them. So right now, you have a lot of noise coming from the ACC, a lot of noise coming from Florida State and Clemson, and also the ACC commissioner. But it's not noise about the upcoming season. Don't get me wrong. I think Florida State's going to be good with DJ Uiagalelei. Clemson, can they get back to their old ways? And I don't trust Dabo Swinney, but that's a different topic for another day, which we've talked about before. But you're not talking about the ACC in terms of football, in terms of on the field. You're talking about Florida State and Clemson trying to plan their departure from the ACC. And that's good and bad. It's good because at least they're talking about the ACC, but what you're talking about with the ACC is going to be their inevitable demise. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a time out. When we come on back, the NFC, they need their young QBs to be elite. It is go time for the young NFC quarterbacks if they ever want to match the AFC. We'll delve into some of those quarterbacks next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. "45 seconds remaining. "30 seconds remaining. "15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I'll get to some of these young quarterbacks in the NFC, and we need them to have big years this season just so we can have some balance in terms of all the young hotshot quarterbacks that some of them are already elite in the AFC. And then in the NFC, you know, right now I would say the best quarterback entering this season in the NFC is Matthew Stafford, but Matthew Stafford's not a young man. There are some quarterbacks that are very young in the NFC that have had some good years or a good year and then have reverted back to being like okay and not being as elite as we thought they could be. Now it's go time for those young quarterbacks, because if they don't match, and if you're following the lines of, like, let's say a Dak Prescott or a Kirk Cousins, where it's just like, oh, you're good, but you're not great, then that's not really having balance when you look at the AFC compared to the NFC. You know, Stu, I've been very complimentary. I think surprisingly complimentary to some that have not listened to me for a long time about the Ohio State Buckeyes going into this season. Now, last year, I told you all throughout the football season that I saw everything I needed to see about Ohio State, even in a win up against Notre Dame, that they weren't going to have a special season because I didn't trust their quarterback in Kyle McCord, and they got lucky at the end of that Notre Dame game because Marcus Freeman couldn't get the right amount of players on the field, and his defense dropped an interception. But sometimes, right, you need to be more lucky rather than good to get a victory. Like, that happens. But I said it all through last year that the Ohio State was going to lose once again to Michigan. And I remember before that game, Mike in Abilene, Texas, who I love Mike. He calls me all the time about Ohio State. When they win, it is like happiness that I've never heard. But then when they lose, I feel bad for Mike in Abilene, Texas, because he goes silent. And then he makes a triumphant return. And then it's like, oh, wow, college football season's getting close. But if I remember, Mike in Abilene, Texas was like, oh, after the Michigan-Ohio State game, I'm flying up to New York, and I am going to pay off my bet, or you're going to have to, say a lot of humble pie and all that stuff. I haven't heard from Mike in Abilene, Texas in a long time. Now, Mike can be fair because Mike, even when Ohio State is good, will sometimes be critical of the team because he expects a certain standard. But really, going into this season, I think Ohio State is in championship or bust mode. And I do believe that Ohio State right now is the second best team in college football, the first being Georgia. And I was talking about Ohio State the last few weeks, and I'm like, I wonder when Mike in Abilene, Texas is going to pop up. And on my screen to my left, it says Mike in Abilene, Texas. Harbaugh, Michigan, cheaters. Now, I know Mike in Abilene, Texas has been down and out the last 3 years because Jim Harbaugh just destroyed his university in the trenches. And Michigan won a national championship. But I thought we were past the Harbaugh-Michigan stuff. But Mike in Abilene, Texas is now on the line, and I guess he wants to talk about Harbaugh and Michigan since they still own a lot of real estate in his cabeza. Mike, how are you? Good afternoon.
I was preparing myself for your age.
Oh, Mike, what are you calling from, a bunker? You calling from a cave? Mike, oh, my God. Your cell phone connection is like Ohio State the last 3 years up against Michigan. It's embarrassing. Really embarrassing. You can't be calling in with a big point and then having your phone connection sound like or look like Ryan Day in a big spot. You just can't have that happen. I really wonder what Mike was going to bitch and complain about, because I thought we were past the Michigan and the Harbaugh stuff, which I'm not saying Michigan didn't do anything wrong, but Michigan kind of showed you that everything that was talked about really ended up being no big deal because they played Penn State when everyone was watching. And guess what? Up against Penn State, they said, we'll just run, and not even throw the ball. And you had Michigan beating Penn State. Then up against Ohio State, Jerome Moore was coaching, not even Jim Harbaugh. And Michigan was better. And then up against Alabama, Michigan was better. And then up against Washington, Michigan was better. So I'm fascinated why Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan scandal, outside of Stallions, I guess now with Netflix, is going to be doing some doc, which I'm very fascinated to watch. I am fascinated what Mike in Abilene, Texas was going to bitch and complain about. So let's try Mike in Abilene, Texas one more time. Mike, I know it's been a rough time for your program the last 3 years, but I don't think you've lost that much money betting on Ohio State where you can't afford the phone bill anymore.
Oh, that's why I don't put money on Ohio State.
I'm just teasing. I'm being a jackass.
Michigan
Go ahead.
Tom Brady, we're going to pull out their MasterCard and swipe for those 3 victories they got. I just wanted to remind everybody, like, Harbaugh's not a winner.
He is. He's a national champion.
When you don't win until you cheat, that doesn't make you a winner. When you have to get an alumni to pull out his checkbook to pay for literally, you have to see what they're running, like in real time. Did we forget all of this stuff? By the way, can't find the address for the studio. I'm ready to go. Haven't bought my jersey yet.
But now that's a little... Mike, I love you, but now that's Fugazi. Like, I expect Ohio State to be better than Michigan this year. So now showing up to the studio when you could have taken your medicine last year, it doesn't really do much for me, if I'm being honest.
Well, it's also not exactly cheap to just fly from Texas to New York at the drop of a dime. And I'm not Tom Brady. I
you
can't just
said it,
hop
not
on one
me.
of my burner phones and just play footballs and
not
then
me.
Hire recruits and pay people. Oh, yeah, I'm broke as a joke, bro.
But I love you.
Oh, I love you, man. Your intro was awesome. I was preparing for it because I knew it was going to be perfect, Zach Gelb, articulate, and it was awesome. I am in the worst state I've ever been in because this just doesn't happen in my lifetime, doesn't happen in my daughter's lifetime. I appreciate, you guys are really, y'all aren't really shying away from it, but ESPN will literally just not even acknowledge it. Paul Feinbaum's on there talking about how Harbaugh's the greatest coach to come out of the Big Ten or any college conference in a while, and he's just going to lead the Chargers to victory eventually. Well, that's assuming that he has a booster, an alumni for the Chargers.
Well, it has nothing to do with the NFL. Jim Harbaugh in the NFL went to 3 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl. Is Michigan this much in your head right now? Like, you should be focused on your season. It's going to be a big year for Ohio State. Right now, you guys are the second team in the country, and you're still obsessed with that Michigan program?
It's been a year since we talked, Zach. You got to remember, I don't care about that stuff. That's where we're expected to be. I care about us riding the ship and reminding everybody that before he won 3 in a row off of cheating, he lost 15. Before he won 3 in a row to end his tenure in college and promptly exited because he was going to get caught cheating and did get caught cheating, and now Michigan's in trouble for it. Thanks, Michigan. Love you, right? Yeah. He didn't win. He didn't win anything.
He didn't win a national championship. He didn't win a Big Ten championship, but they did have some double-digit win seasons.
Correct. And they didn't do any of that stuff until they got caught cheating on an egregious level that no one's ever even heard of before.
And what did the cheating? Awesome. What did when everyone was watching? How did Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama, and Washington fare? How'd they fare?
So did they? Throw
I'm just asking.
Cheating material.
I'm just asking. Did it really have that much of an impact?
They got beat by Michigan, who's not a great. Who wasn't?
No. Mike. I'm saying. When everyone knew what was going on for what you claim is this egregious infraction, and then everything was a level playing field, how did Penn State, Ohio State, Washington, and Alabama fare if it was all about cheating with what Michigan did?
We came down to the last play with a quarterback that's not even good enough to play Division I, and who will.
Yeah, but you're usually fair when you watch that game. Up until there was that fumble late and they recovered it, you never thought Ohio State was actually going to win because Michigan was just better in the trenches the last 3 years. And
we were driving and about to be in the red zone until we got picked off. So, yeah, absolutely did think we were going to win because we were the better team.
No, we
just weren't spying on their plays in real life.
But nothing happened in that game. You can't use this. If you want to talk about the spying and stallions and all that stuff, you can't use it for this past year. Everything was even this past year in that Ohio State-Michigan game.
Do we really believe that? Oh, we got caught. We're going to stop now. We're going to throw away all the material we have on Ohio State, even though we've got a whole room full of it for the end of the year. We're going to throw it away now. We're clean.
Well, let's be real. Your football coach should have worried a little bit less about his pregame dance routine with the team and actually focus about beating the team, and maybe you guys would have won that game.
You know how I feel about him. Yeah. It should have been gone.
Mike, I'm just thanks for the phone call. I'm just a little disappointed. We haven't heard from you since that game in November of Thanksgiving weekend. And now you call on July 23rd to start the Michigan cheating stallion stuff again? I'm telling you, that's just minor league behavior from Ohio State fans. And I thought Ohio State fans were better than that. This is a big season for Ohio State. Big. I think Ohio State is a great team this year. The last few years, I didn't think that was the case. But maybe it's time to just focus on yourself and not get so annoyed with Jim Harbaugh, who's no longer the coach of Michigan. And now you're going to talk all tough when Michigan, who'll probably lose 3 or 4 games this year, but they're a totally different team. McCarthy gone, Corum gone. They still got some good players, but kind of Michigan now reminds me of Ohio State last year. Tremendous defense, or on paper, a really good defense. I think Michigan has a better defense than Ohio State. But on offense, you don't know what you're going to be able to get because there's a big question mark, a big fat question mark at the quarterback position. So here we are on the 23rd day where I have to deal with an Ohio State fan. Just when I was saying something nice and complimentary about the program, I think it's going to be a big year. And that program is still obsessed about just beating Michigan. It's not about just beating Michigan this year. It's about beating everyone. Because your quarterback, who transferred over from Kansas State, said it's championship or bust. He's right. Urban Meyer, which I love the Ohio State fans. Hey, let's talk about Jim Harbaugh as if he's Satan, but Urban Meyer's a king and a god. He's always run a clean program. Urban Meyer was the one that said this team and Ohio State is maybe the deepest team they've ever had. So you should be focusing on your own program. Own program. That's what you should be focusing on. And instead, that's my one big fear for Ohio State this year. Do they have the mental toughness to win it all? Because on paper, you could only probably make the case that there's one team better than them, and it's debatable. It's Georgia. But on paper and then on the field are two different things. Because that C.J. Stroud fella, he was pretty good on paper. He had a very good college football career. But in the big games with all those talented wide receivers, what did they do? How many championships, national championships, did they win? And it's only getting tougher because you have 12 teams. So I don't want to hear about what happened last year and this and that and this and that and this and that. Let's focus on this year. And this year, Ohio State, not Michigan, is one of 4 teams that are truly championship or bust. And that's coming from someone that's pro-Michigan. But it's nice to talk a big game in July. It's nice to rally up the troops in the summer months and say, this is going to be the year. And here they come. Here comes Ohio State. Let's dot the I, right? Here we go. Get the marching band ready to go. But you know it and I know it. If you're just judging this year off of beating Michigan, and then that's the success, and then you don't win a college football national championship, it's a disaster of a season. It's a failure of a season. And oh, please. I don't think it would happen. But if I could make one wish to the college football gods right now, I would love to see Crying Day lose to Michigan this year. Because on paper, there is no reason why Michigan, who has a great defense but a questionable offense, should beat Ohio State this year. And I really, really hope, though, that I'm wrong on that. I really hope Crying Day with this stupid pregame routine is crying and once again has a blank look on his face like he doesn't know what just hit him. So I wasn't expecting a little Ohio State, Michigan 20 minutes into the show on a Tuesday in July. Wasn't expecting that. But Mike in Abilene, Texas, he knows how to throw some punches. I don't know how many delivered, but he knows how to throw some punches, and we always do appreciate him and hope everything's all right with him. All righty, we'll take a timeout. We'll come on back. The NFC need their young QBs to start to be elite. We'll talk about them on the other side. Update time first, though. Here is El Capitan, Marco Belletti.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Zach, we're sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Protect your family, your phone, and your furry friends with Life Electronic Device and Pet Health Insurance. Plenty of teams reporting to camp around the NFL, and it seems like we're getting a little closer to an 18-game season being a reality. NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell told the Washington Post they've had talks. They'll continue to do so with the possibility of getting this done before the collective bargaining agreement ends in 2030. Jets' newly acquired pass rusher Hassan Reddick, a holdout on the first day of camp as he wants a new long-term deal. Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo quick to say Jacoby Brissett leg up on number 3 pick Drake May, but we're a long way from week 1.
Coming out of the spring, Jacoby looks like the starting quarterback. Now, with that being said, he'll have competition. There's let's not forget about even Joe Milton. Let's not forget about Zappy. All those guys will have opportunities.
Now, so Jaguars agreeing to a 4-year deal, $76.5 million with corner Tyson Campbell. Kevin Durant fully expected to remain on the USA Olympic roster despite still dealing with the strained calf. Drew Holiday jumped into a question posed to head coach Steve Kerr to make sure there was no confusion.
That's Kevin Durant, my boy. Now, where are we talking about? That's KD. Nah, he need to be out there.
And the Sixers reportedly plan to sign veteran Reggie Jackson after he clears waivers. I'm Marco Belletti.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on X. Our handle is INF Sports Network. That's INF Sports Network on X.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network, and the Defensive Player of the Week is sponsored by the Navy Federal Credit Union, who proudly serves the Armed Forces, DoD, veterans, and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. This week's player is Astros second baseman Jose Altuve. Altuve leads all second basemen in fielding percentage this season at .997, has only made one error in 95 games. Let's get into the quarterback discrepancy when you look at the AFC to the NFC. So you have older quarterbacks in each conference, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, I still think is a great quarterback. There's the hot take of the day. But you're not thinking about Aaron Rodgers for the future. Like Matthew Stafford, I don't know how many more years he's going to play. I do think he walks into this year as the best quarterback in the NFC and the quarterback that I trust the most. Even like a guy like Dak Prescott, who still has a long run left in him. But I look at Dak, and I think we know what Dak is now as he turns 31 next week. And when I look at Dak Prescott, he's just a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. Kirk Cousins, same thing. Good quarterback, not a great quarterback. But we've seen a lot of all-time great quarterbacks leave, right? Drew Brees walked away from the game. Tom Brady walked away from the game. Now you're going back many, many, many years ago, but Peyton Manning walked away from the game. So you've had a shift in the quarterback landscape. We all know the best quarterback in the league is Patrick Mahomes. And then I think on everybody, or most lists, if I say, who are the next two best quarterbacks in the league, it is Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. Maybe not Qadri Ismail's list, but he wouldn't even tell us yesterday who was going to be the second and third and fourth best quarterback. But I do think Lamar Jackson's then the fourth best quarterback in the sport entering this season. You notice one thing in common? AFC, 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 AFC. Now, C.J. Stroud's great. Justin Herbert has potential to be great. And even some of the question marks in the AFC, can Anthony Richardson be a star? Will Tua Tagovailoa be able to develop a star? Will Trevor Lawrence be able to develop into a star? Will Drake May be able to be a great quarterback? So there's some quarterbacks that we've seen very little of or none at all. But you already look at the foundation in the AFC, like, hey, Deshaun Watson is a question mark. He used to be viewed as a top 7 quarterback, but we haven't seen that in quite some time. So you go through it, and if you want to talk about the guys that we know are great, that's Mahomes, that's Allen, that's Burrow, that's a 2-time MVP, and Lamar Jackson. So even if those other guys don't hit, that's a pretty damn great start for the AFC. Where only if 2 more hit, you still have a long or a good list of great quarterbacks already in your conference. In the NFC, though, sure, Goff is really damn good. He's a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. Debatable, but I do think he's in the top 10. Dak is good, not great. Stafford's the best quarterback in the NFC. Kirk Cousins, he's not going to last long in Atlanta because they already drafted his replacement in Michael Penix Jr. But, maybe Stafford, you could argue, is great. And I think with that Super Bowl, he will be, there's a good case he could get into the Hall of Fame if he plays 2 or 3 more really good seasons. But you look around, it's like in the NFC, they're waiting for that next era. They are waiting for it not just to be good quarterbacks in the NFC, but great quarterbacks. And you look at the youngsters in the NFC. Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl, even though they lost. Second, the next year after getting known as that guy and getting the contract, started off 10-1, down the stretch was a disaster. So this is a big bounce back year for Jalen Hurts. Brock Purdy, a year and a half, been to an NFC championship game, been to a Super Bowl. I think he's going to be a special quarterback, but there's always that debate, is what happens when the system doesn't have as many players as it does right now. Like, you got Ayuk for now, who showed up today. You got Deebo Samuel, Run CMC, Kittle as well. Eventually, you're not going to have all those guys. You want to look around at some of the other quarterbacks. Jordan Love, he's going to get a ridiculous contract. And I think that word ridiculous has a negative connotation. I don't mean it that way, but he could be the highest paid quarterback in the league, potentially. He has all the leverage. Brian Gutekunst drafted him, ran Rodgers out of town. I'm not saying it was the wrong decision. It ended up proving to be right. And a lot of us had egg on our face when we were all slamming Gutekunst. But Love is showing up, holding in, is just not participating in practice. But I saw that it was raining today at the Packers training camp, and Love is still standing out there. He's not doing any of the drills, but he's standing out there. So Love knows they're going to get him a deal done, and I would be surprised if it doesn't get done by the end of the month. But, Love has potential, and we saw him, right? Last 8 regular season games, he had 20 total touchdowns and 1 interception. That's crazy. But we got to see more out of it. So those 3 guys, Hurts, Purdy, and Love, definitely reasons to be optimistic. Purdy, I think, is going to take a Super Bowl for people to finally give him his due. Love, got to continue where he picked up and left off last year. And Hurts needs to have a big bounce back season or the narrative will change on him. But outside of that, you're looking at some of these young quarterbacks in the NFC. Jaden Daniels, we haven't seen him play a snap yet. Caleb Williams, generational talent, right? I hope he lives up to the hype in Chicago because Chicago fans finally deserve a quarterback. J.J. McCarthy with the Minnesota Vikings, a winner. Do people think he's a great quarterback or just a good quarterback? I think more good. In the right system, but he's not even supposed to play week 1. It's supposed to be Sam Darnold, which I still can't believe, and I think is a waste of everybody's time. Michael Penix Jr., by design, you're not going to see him on the field this year, and maybe not even next year. And I think Michael Penix Jr. has a ceiling of being a very good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. And then after that, here are two names that I think a lot of people are out on currently, but don't be surprised if they turn it around. And that's Kyler Murray and also Bryce Young. Kyler Murray, when he got paid, I didn't think he should have got paid when he did, but you got to remember, he got all the leverage in the world, and that's why he got paid, because the organization rushed to pay Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury when they did not need to do so. And that only lasted a year after that, then both were out of a job. But once those two guys got extensions, when you look at the guy that is responsible for coaching him and the guy that drafted him, you had to pay Kyler. Kyler suffered an unfortunate injury, was out for a lot of last season, but didn't really have much to work with. Now, you draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. was the best player in the draft from this past NFL draft. They were 4-13 last year, the Arizona Cardinals. I can't believe I'm going to say this because you usually don't like to hype up a 4-13 team. And I'm not saying the Cardinals are going to be good this year. But they were one of the better 4-13 teams I've ever seen. Like, we thought the Cardinals were going to be dreadful. 4-13 isn't pretty, but at least they competed hard. And they were in games that you didn't expect them to be in. And, they pulled off the upset up against the Philadelphia Eagles. But the other quarterback, when you do look at Kyler Murray, now it's about getting back to that good spot. And then once you get back to that good spot, can you get back to that, can you get to that great spot? Because Kyler was in that spot in the NFL where he was good, very good, got a team to playoffs, then was terrible up against the Rams. Terrible. And that was on that, I think it was the first time we saw that Monday night wild card game. He was putrid and deservedly so got slammed and really took no accountability. But Bryce Young is someone else. Everyone was in on Bryce Young entering this time last year. And Bryce Young maybe got drafted, and this is probably taking the Raiders for a run for their money. Sorry, Stu. To the worst destination possible that an owner and David Tepper that was too hands-on, Frank Reich, right, a good coach but not a great coach, all this experience coaching, but it was such a toxic building last year that Bryce Young was never going to succeed. And Bryce Young is small, but we saw what he did at Alabama. And now it's about Bryce Young just getting back on the train track this year and not worrying about how you get to your final destination, but just get to the final destination and bring back hope to Panthers fans that you can be the guy. Because if you're not the guy, we already know that franchise has been set back for a while, but all they gave up for him, it will really be set back. So you look at the NFC landscape this year, I don't think you could say right now in the NFC there's an elite quarterback. The best quarterback is Matthew Stafford. But how many of these younger guys are going to enter in the next year, 2 or 3, the elite conversation? We've seen some signs from some of them, but nothing that's been consistent over the course of multiple seasons where you're like, for sure that quarterback, we're going to be talking about him for the next 5 to 10 years. All right, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a break. When we come on back, my top 5 and also bottom 5 NFL teams entering the 2024 season.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, away we go. Hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We have a quick schedule change. Justin Pugh, the former Cardinals offensive lineman, also started and may have ended his career with the Giants. I don't know if he's retired yet officially, but we'll ask him about that. He's going to stop by 20 minutes from now as we will continue our NFL preview as we go through all 32 teams, and he will actually be our representative to preview the Arizona Cardinals that we talked about a little bit in the last segment with Kyler Murray and his future in the league, and can he get back to being a good quarterback, and then once he does that, can he take it to a level of greatness? But with training camps opening around the league, I'm thinking right now, and I saw that there was some publication that did their power rankings, all 32 teams, and I was going to do my top 10 teams, and I was going through my top 10 teams, And I think you have a good idea. Like, probably on most people's lists, it's 12 teams, you pick 10, and then the order is fascinating. But I wanted to condense it. And I actually thought it was more challenging to do the 5 worst teams rather than the 5 best teams. And you go through it this year. Like, if I just went through all of the teams in the NFL and I just said, would it be inconceivable for this team to make the playoffs? Yes or no? Like, would you be blown away if this team made the playoffs? Obviously, the Bills should be a playoff team. The Dolphins are in the playoff contention. The Jets as well. The Patriots would be shocked. Ravens, Browns, Steelers, Bengals, none of them would shock you if you made the playoffs. The AFC South, I think, I'm not saying all 4 are going to get in because I don't believe that's going to happen. Texans, Jaguars, Colts, no one should be surprised by them. And if like Tennessee, who has put together a solid team, tremendous secondary right now, and not only that, you take a glance on offense, they got Tony Pollard, they got DeAndre Hopkins, they got Calvin Ridley. It's all going to be, will Levis be their dude? Like, I'm not expecting Tennessee to be a playoff team, but it wouldn't be crazy if they were better than what people thought. You look at the AFC West, Chiefs, absolutely. We know them. They're the team to beat. The Chargers wouldn't surprise you. They're a playoff team. I would be surprised if the Broncos are. The Raiders, I can't see Aiden O'Connell. I know Minshew almost made the playoffs last year, but I would be surprised if the Raiders made the playoffs. Like, Stu, let me ask you this, because I know you are our resident expert when it comes to the Raiders, or the tortured Raider fan on the show. Like, offensively, you look at the Raiders, the tight ends intrigue you. Devontae Adams, obviously still one of the better wide receivers in the league. But outside of that on offense, is there anything that you're really jumping up and down about?
No, I mean...
Colton Miller's good.
He's good, and I wouldn't say excited. I'm intrigued by Zamir White. He's not as good as Josh Jacobs, and I'm not going to sit here and say that. Yeah. But in bursts, he's shown that he can do things. So, over a full 17-game season, I'm intrigued. I'll say that.
And then defensively, you love Crosby, yes. You love Wilkins, and then it's like, okay, who else is going to help out on the defense, right?
Yeah, and the schedule's really hard. Like, we don't have to go through the whole schedule, but the schedule is tough. They obviously have the Chiefs twice, the Chargers twice, and then, they finished third, so they have a third-place schedule, which is not a fourth-place schedule. So it's not an easy schedule.
And they were still 8-9 last year.
Yeah.
And they survived the early part of McDaniels, and they finished strong with Antonio Pierce. So, I'm not saying it's impossible for them to make the playoffs. I would just be very surprised if they did.
I would be stunned.
I was just trying to be nice.
I know.
It's a Tuesday.
I appreciate that.
It's basically a Thursday because tomorrow is the last day of my work week. So I'm just trying to be in a benevolent, happy-go-lucky mood. But if you go through it, that's the entire AFC, right? Raiders, Broncos, Patriots would stun you if they made the playoffs. Everyone else, I don't think it's crazy to say that they would. Maybe Tennessee should be grouped in to one of those, the other 3 teams that I mentioned that maybe can't make it. But Tennessee doesn't have a bad roster. Now, in the NFC, Cowboys, Eagles, definitely, right, are in the conversation. Even though I think the Cowboys will miss the playoffs this year. The Giants would be stunned if they make it. They have a great defense. Outside of Malik Neighbors, there's nothing that really moves me offensively for them. The Commanders, it's going to be weird. Because the Commanders are in my bottom 5 teams in the NFL, but it shows you how tricky this is. Like, if Jaden Daniels is great in year 1, like, who thought the Texans last year were going to be in the playoffs? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we've seen crazier things happen before. Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings. I'm not saying people expect it with the Vikings, but no one would be shocked if any of, with those teams making the playoffs. The NFC South, that's where it gets a little, one team's going to win. I think one team gets in. You won't have a second team. The Panthers are going to stink. The Falcons should be good. The Saints and the Bucks, they both could win the division, but I don't think they will. And then when you look at the NFC West, I think the 49ers, we know they're going to be great. The Rams, I don't think are getting talked about enough just because Aaron Donald retired. Seattle was 9-8. If Geno Smith could get back to Geno Smith 2 years ago, that could be a playoff team, and Arizona will be improved. So what I'm getting at here is you don't walk into this season saying, man, this team's putrid. Man, I have at least 10 teams that are rancid. I'm thinking about the 5 worst teams in the NFL still. let me know what you think about this order. Now, how should I do this? Should I say the worst team first, or should I save the worst for last when we go through this order?
I think worst to first is the way to do it. I think we kind of all know who the worst and second worst teams are.
So save the worst teams for last, is what you're saying?
No, I think worst to first.
Okay.
Like worst
gotcha.
to fifth worst.
Yeah. I was a little confused there. That was a challenging question. The worst team in the NFL entering this season. It was between two teams for me. I put the Panthers there in at 32. Because I just fear, and I hope it's not the case, and they did make some improvements this offseason. And with the parameters around that job and some of the roadblocks with that job, promoting Morgan and then also hiring Dave Canales, it's not the worst that they could have done. But they did lose Brian Burns. And I just look at that team, and the Tepper factor, I think, is real. So I put the Panthers in at 32nd. At 31st, it's my Patriots. The reason why I put the Pats in front of the Panthers is there's an unknown with Drake May. We don't know when we're going to see Drake May. The Patriots, their offensive line's a question mark, and they don't have much at the skill positions. But defensively, that's a good defense. That is a defense that you saw that they were still good last year. I know Belichick's no longer there, but Mayo is still there as the head coach. But that was basically a defense that played well with nothing last year at offense. Like maybe one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. And now you get Gonzalez back. Judon's still there, depending on the contract issue. So I still think the Pats, they're bad. They're gunning for the first pick. But I think they're the second worst team in the league. In at 30th, it's the Broncos. All right, I like Garrett Bowles. Surtain, I think, is the best cornerback in the NFL. But outside of that, what are you really selling me on? You hope the running back could stay healthy in Javonte Williams, because I liked him coming out of UNC. But I think Sean Payton is not what he once was, and I'm not this big fan of Bo Nix. Bo Nix was tremendous at Oregon. What he did at Oregon was super duper impressive. I don't think Bo Nix is going to be an elite quarterback in the NFL. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Because in any of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL, in any list, the Panthers, the Pats, and the Broncos have to be on it. And for me, Panthers 32, Pats 31, Broncos 30th. The next 2 teams were NFC East teams. I put the Giants at 29. And I was flip-flopping with the Giants and the Commanders. But the reason why I put the Giants at 29, who have a defense that could be very special, and there was fighting last year with Wink Martindale and Brian Daboll. Now Martindale's now at Michigan, and you have the Bowen, the defensive coordinator, coming over from Tennessee. But you look at that defensive line for the Giants are going to be able to get after the quarterback. You got Sexy Dexy and Dexter Lawrence. You got Kayvon Thibodeau, and then you added Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers. But on offense, the Giants improved their offensive line. It's one thing to say you improved it, though, and how much better did you actually get? Because the Giants' offensive line last year was horrible. And they rotated guys in like a turnstile in Penn Station pre-COVID. That's how bad the Giants' offensive line was. And the Giants got a playmaker in Malik Neighbors, but you have a quarterback who's a walking injury and a quarterback that I don't think is really any good in Daniel Jones. He's a lame duck quarterback. So I put the Giants in at 29th, even though I love their defense. The Commanders are 28th. And it's the reason why they're 28th, it's based off the hope. Right? You got an underrated wide receiver. He's tremendous in Terry McLaurin. But now you made that move to go get Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has to be a franchise quarterback. If he's not, then the Commanders, the next 3 years are just a waste. And I think Jaden Daniels would be really damn good as long as he could stay healthy. But outside of that, it's not like there's a lot of tangible pieces that you latch on with the Commanders and that you're really excited about. So those are my 5 worst teams in the league, Stu. Panthers 32, Pats 31, Broncos 30, Giants 29, and the Commanders 28. You shocked anyone's not on that list, by the way?
I guess the team I would put on there that you don't have on there. I know you're higher on this team than I am, but I just don't think the Titans are going to be very good.
Fair.
I think the division is tough in the sense of those three teams above them are all possible playoff teams.
Everyone thought that division stunk going into last year.
Yeah.
And now it's a good division.
That's a good division.
It's a solid division.
So I just, and Will Levis, I'm just not sold on.
Fair.
I know, again, he's young, so there is a chance of growth, but I just think they're in such a transitional period where I think they're going to be in that bottom 4 to 5 teams.
Okay. No Raiders for you in there? Your
They're
Raiders?
close. They're probably, if there was another team outside of the Titans, I'd probably put the Raiders in there.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to be good.
Now, here are my 5 best teams. Stu, just wondering, do you think you could predict who are your 5 best teams in the NFL? I ask you this right now, your 5 best teams.
Okay.
Who do you go with? Because I have my 5 in front of me.
Okay, I'll go Chiefs. Mm-hmm. I'll go 49ers.
Yep.
I will go Bengals.
Ooh.
I will go Packers.
Wow.
And I will go...
No Lions?
No Lions.
Ooh, you're out on the Lions this year?
Out on the Lions. And I think they're a playoff team. I just don't think they're one of the best teams in the league.
So you believe the Packers win the division over the Lions?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Who's your 5th?
I'll go Bills 5th.
You
I'll
will
still
go Bills 5th.
Yeah.
So you had the Chiefs, the Niners.
Yes.
The Bengals.
Yes.
The Packers. And then the Bills.
Yeah, those are my 5.
I'll say this. One prediction I will make for the NFL season already. Josh Allen's going to be the MVP of the league this year. I don't have the Bills as one of my top 5 teams in the NFL this year because, right, there's questions on that defense. Offensively, you lose Stephon Diggs, expecting big things out of Keon Coleman. James Cook was really good last year. Dalton Kincaid, I think he's going to be a player in this league. I was a big fan of his coming out of Utah. But it's not a hoping with the Bills offense. But what I do know is Josh Allen is great. And they are going to say, once again, Josh Allen, this is on you. And I think you're going to see a motivated Bills team in the regular season. And I do still believe they'll win the AFC East. And as long as they win the AFC East, when you're looking for a reason to not give Mahomes the MVP, right, because of how great he is, Lamar just won his 2nd, so he probably won't win a 3rd this season. I do believe Josh Allen, since the expectations are lowered from what they've been in previous years, he's set up, even if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, remember, MVP, a regular season award, to overachieve in the regular season. And I do believe statistically he's going to have a monster year, and I have the Bills quarterback Josh Allen winning the MVP. But the Bills aren't in my top 5 teams right now. My top 5 teams. So I don't have the Bills, and I don't have the Packers. But I have the Chiefs 1, the 49ers 2. I do put the Lions with what they showed last year, and they continued from the second half 2 years ago. I put the Lions in at 3. Eagles 4. Now, I will say this about the Lions and the Eagles. What could hold both those teams back? Because offensively, I think both those teams are going to be humming this year. Even with the Kelsey retirement, even with the questions with Hurts, I think the Eagles' offense is going to be awesome this year. They got so much talent. Brown, Smith, you have Goddard. They have so much talent on the offensive side of the ball. Saquon, obviously. Their defense is a question mark, though. Lions, same thing. Their defense was fine when they needed to be, but is it Super Bowl caliber? That's a big question I have for the Lions and the Eagles. But I think their offense are so good that they're going to be top 5 teams. And then I do put the Bengals in at 5th. And with the Bengals, it all comes down to, can they be healthy? Because when Joe Burrow is healthy, we've seen him in a Super Bowl, and we've seen him in an AFC title game. In those 2 years when healthy. It is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. My 5 best teams in the NFL entering this season. Chiefs 1, 49ers 2, Lions 3, Eagles 4th, Bengals 5th. My bottom 5 teams, Panthers 32nd, Pats 31, Broncos 30th, the G-Men in at 29, and the Commanders in at 28. We'll take a timeout. When we come on back, we preview the Arizona Cardinals with former Cardinals offensive lineman Justin Pugh.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Football season is right around the corner.
Holding himself, runs to the left, he's to the 5, Lamar's in, touchdown Ravens. They're going to have a championship game in Baltimore because the Hayes Lombard.
Will it be your team's year to hoist the Lombardi?
In the shotgun, Mahomes. He runs and he throws, caught, touchdown. It's caught. Hardman caught the ball. The Chiefs have won. The Chiefs have won. The entire bench empties. Chasing Mahomes in the end zone. Their third Super Bowl in 5 years.
We preview all 32 teams right here on the Zach Gelb Show. The Arizona Cardinals.
All righty, we'll We'll preview the Arizona Cardinals with one of their former offensive linemen. That, of course, is Justin Pugh, who played for the Giants from 2013 to 2017, then was with the Cardinals from 2018 to 2022 before returning to the G-Men this past season. By the way, check out his podcast, Bridging the Gap Between the Business of the NFL and Fans. It's hosted by Justin Pugh, and the name of the podcast is Net Worth with Justin Pugh. And I also hear that Justin Pugh's coming back from a big golf trip, and he's kind enough to join us right now. Appreciate it, Justin. How you been, my man?
Zach, I'm doing great. I'm just got back from the Open. I was out in Scotland for the Open. I was in Ireland for a little bit, checking in on my brothers across the pond, and I'm back in New York, so it's good to be back in America.
Was that the first ever major championship you've ever attended for golf? Just wondering.
I've been to a U.S. Open and I've been to the Masters, so I will say Augusta is still number one. If you can get to that event, it's one of one. But it was truly important for me to see how that European link style golf is played. And I played golf while I was there and got my butt kicked. So I truly respected those guys. When you see them make bogeys or hit one out of bounds, I was like, all right, it's not just me.
Yeah, you bring up the Masters. That's actually a sore subject today. I got my rejection email. It's the first year I put in for tickets, and I got rejected. So I'm hoping by the time I'm like 60 and I turn 30 in a few weeks that I'll be able to get to Augusta, Justin.
Just keep those fingers crossed.
No doubt about that. Justin Pugh here with us. All righty, let's get to the Cardinals. I'm going to start with their new wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. I thought he was the best wide receiver in the draft. I thought he was the best player in the draft. We've seen young wide receivers take the league by storm. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Even this past year, no one thought it was going to happen, but Puka Nacua did that with the LA Rams. Year one expectations for Marvin Harrison Jr. What do you think he brings to the Cardinals?
Yeah, he's a dynamic playmaker, the receiver one. I think he's a favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, him or Caleb Williams. I think he'll be the best rookie receiver this year. He's going into a great situation. I love the Cardinals offense. Kyler Murray's going to have a big year. You have James Conner in the backfield being able to take some pressure off. The offensive line has gotten better. Obviously, they lost E.J. Humphries, which I think will be a little bit of an impact. But I think everything is there. Trey McBride is there as ascending tight end. I really think it lends itself to Marvin Harrison having a breakout season. I think he will end up being Offensive Rookie of the Year.
We'll get to the quarterback in just a second, Kyler Murray. The offensive line, Paris Johnson Jr. now in year number 2. I know you know some of the big fellas up front, but how do you evaluate their offensive line heading into this season?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that they've made some good jumps. Now, you lose some veteran leadership with DJ Humphries. He had been a stalwart there at left tackle for years. You're moving Paris Johnson from right tackle to left tackle. You're bringing in Jonah Williams. You have Will Hernandez, who's been a steady force. Left guard, they're still trying to kind of figure out who's going to be that guy. They might be calling me here shortly to see if I want to drive down the street and go play. But I feel very comfortable with the offense. They were aggressive last year. They were fun to watch. They were in every game. And when Kyler came back, he played great football. And there's a lot of ascending players on this offense. I don't think it's the year for the Cardinals just yet, but they are building something special, and I think it's gonna show on the field this year.
Well, what is your deal? I know you returned to the Giants last year midway through the season, and you just talked about maybe the Cardinals calling you. Are you still interested? Do you still want to play in the NFL?
I do. I do still want to play. I think really for me it comes down to a place that I'm familiar with, a place that I'm comfortable with. I probably would say that place is the New York Giants if I were to come back and play this year. But it has to be the right situation. And I liked last year. I didn't have to do training camp. Kind of came back in, started the last 12 games of the season. It was a good deal for me. So yeah, we'll see. As teams call, we evaluate every situation. I'm not turning any of them down. I did not retire. I'm open to playing, but it has to be the right fit, and then we're waiting on that.
How long do you hope to take to make that decision? Like, could this be another thing where you return in October, November, or are you looking to get back in right away?
I think I'm open to both. Like, I think if I'm not signed with the team before the beginning of the season, we let things play out a little bit. Like, going back to New York last year, I went back to the Giants, and they were 1-6. I knew the environment I was getting into, but I felt obligated. Maybe not obligated is not the right word, but I felt compelled to go back to the team that I got my start at and get back into the New York market. I love New York City, but I also live right down the street in Arizona. So things are going well with them and they need a left guard, and that's the position that I want to play. I wouldn't be, against that reunion as well. And then there's some, teams that are probably making a playoff run. But the New York Giants are really the team I have circled on my short list.
Justin Pugh here with us. We'll get back to the Giants in just a bit, but since we brought you on to preview the Cardinals, we'll continue with them. Kyler Murray, when you look at him, right, he was stuck in that good quarterback conversation, not a great quarterback, then gets hurt, barely played last year, and now there's some big expectations for him to get going again. You've been around Kyler. What is he as a quarterback?
He's progressed every year. I mean, he came in as a rookie and basically makes Pro Bowls just purely off of athleticism and his God-given talents. And he is one of the most talented players I have ever played with. He's gotten better. He's matured. There was a whole deal with his contract and things like that. But I know Kyler firsthand. I think coming off of the injury, he has something to prove. He's hungry. He's got a great receiver. We saw what he did when he had DeAndre Hopkins. You get a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., who everyone thinks the world of. There's a guy there, Greg Dortch, who I think some people I don't think he's as slept on anymore as he once was. Michael Wilson coming back. You have Trey McBride. So I'm very optimistic on the Cardinals offense. The issue I think I have is who are the guys in the defense that are going to make plays? And that it's going to be more of a committee effort. There's going to be multiple guys making play. There's not that pass rusher on the Cardinals that is a closer in a game like some other teams have. So I think that's where the Cardinals still have a little bit of way to go. They addressed that in the draft. I think that it was Darius Robinson they took in the first round, but I think they still have a little ways to go on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's the big thing. And if the offense, if there's some rust to start the season, then the defense really comes crashing and burning down because that defense is not expected to be a good unit. So that it even puts more pressure on the offense because a good offense can help out a defense that's struggling a bit.
Oh, of course. And you look at safety. I mean, you have Buda Baker, you have Jalen Thompson. I mean, those guys are studs. You have Dennis Gardeck, who's been there, been a great playmaker for them. But, again, it's a very much a balanced NFL. If you don't have one or the other, you're going to get exposed. So you can only put up so many points, and maybe they can put up points early and the defense can do some things. But, this is a continuation to rebuild this team. And I think we're in the first phase, the first few innings, and Kyler Murray has a long career, Marvin Harrison a long career to go, Trey McBride, all these young names I keep mentioning, there's a lot of core pieces to be excited about if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan.
And the one thing that I'll say, Justin Pugh, and I think it's a good endorsement for the coach, Jonathan Gannon, who I was very skeptical of when he got hired. I know they were 4-13 last year, but they were competitive for a roster that isn't really all that talented and was lacking a lot. I thought they played very hard for their coach last year.
You love to see that, and I think that was probably the biggest boost for the coaching staff, that these guys went out and they played hard for you. And I think that is an always a good thing, but you never know. When teams start losing consecutively, guys start to lose that luster and that momentum. So you really need to see them take that step. You want to see them in that 500 range this year, maybe have a chance to get into the playoffs, making a push, staying in it the whole season. Because if you start having consecutive losing seasons, it starts to wear on guys, and the game is so mental. The game is so much how you wake up on a Sunday morning feeling, and if that coach can't motivate you or get you to the next step, it starts to fall down the wayside. So you need to see progression, and that's something that, I'm looking forward to seeing from the Cardinals this year.
We know how good the 49ers can be. They're in Super Bowl or bust mode. The Cardinals are continuing this rebuild as we've laid out. What are your thoughts on the Rams and the Seahawks going into this year, Justin?
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are going to be going through a little bit of an identity crisis themselves. The Rams and the Niners, you know who they are. I think they finished 1 and 2 in the division with the Rams being second and the 49ers being first. I think the 49ers have the most talented team in the NFL. They have to get some contract things figured out with their receivers. But as long as they can figure out the accounting and the contracts of those players, I think they're still the team to beat. The Rams, Cooper Kupp goes down. You're like, oh, the Rams have no weapons. And all of a sudden you have the running back, Kieran Williams, step up. And then you have Puka Nacua stepping up. And all of a sudden they're reloaded again. And McVay is one of the best offensive minds in football. So the Seahawks still have a ton of talent. I don't necessarily think that they are ready to take that next step. Geno Smith's a great quarterback. I don't know if he's at that elite level to get them over the hump. But yeah, I see the Cardinals and and the Seahawks towards the bottom half of that division, competing for a chance to maybe make the playoffs. NFC West has always been a very good conference, but it's going to be hard when you have a team like the Rams and the Niners sitting in there at the top. And the Seahawks are always a very tough place to play as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Wrap it up with Justin Pugh. All right, you talked about your interest of potentially going back with the Giants. They've beefed up that offensive line this year, especially in the interior. Now you take a look at that offensive line, you being able to play in New York before, and then also knowing what it takes to play offensive line in this league. How do you kind of look at this Giants offensive line headed into this season?
Yeah, I mean, look, last year there was a bunch of injuries. You look at your All-Pro Andrew Thomas, who had some injuries last year. He's coming back. You brought in Jermaine Illuminor. He's playing guard. John Michael Schmidt in his second year. I think he takes a big step. I love what he did last year. He's a leader. You bring in John Runyon, who was one of the best pass protectors in the league last year. I love what the Giants did. And then you have Evan Neal. I think a lot hinges on Evan and how he is recovering from that injury. You need him to be that tackle that you drafted him to be. And if that doesn't happen, I would see Jermaine Illuminor moving out there. They brought in a veteran, Greg Van Rotten, and I saw he came in free agency yesterday. He's a solid player. So I think that the Giants made a lot of upgrades, and they have a lot of talent on the roster. They're still similar to the Cardinals, trying to figure out who they are. We saw in Hard Knocks they talk about what's our identity, and Joe Shane comes back to it. Hey, we're paying the quarterback to be that guy. You go out and draft Malik Neighbors. They're starting to show what the identity that they want to have, and that's to throw the ball and air it out a bit. Devin Singletary's no slouch. He had some great seasons there in Houston. So the Giants are still figuring out, where they fit into the mix. You have Dallas, you have Philly, you have two very good teams in the division. It doesn't take 1 year to rebuild to beat those kind of teams.
I know the offensive line, as you talked about, had just so many guys rotating in and out last year. You being a part of that, coming off the couch and then ended up playing some games for the Giants. The quarterback, though, it feels like to me, I know they're giving him a chance, but I would be shocked if he's their guy heading into next season. What's kind of your evaluation with the little time that you were around Daniel Jones?
Yeah, unfortunately with the injuries Daniel had last year, I got to play, I think, 2 series with him, so I never really got a chance to see, what he was at 100%. And that's the questions that he'll have to face this year. There's going to be a lot of pressure. You're in New York. Not an easy place to play, but when you win, it's the best place to play. And this is a make-or-break season for him. He knows it. He's coming off ACL injury. Does he have all the tools? Does anyone have all the tools? Not everyone gets put in different situations, but they're paying him to uplift guys around him. And if he shows that progression and he can take those next steps, they have him under contract. You see these quarterback contracts are going to start becoming north of $60 million. So with the cap increasing, I don't think the salary is as big of a concern as it would previously, or people make it out to be. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see what the Giants do. You look at defense, you have Dexter Lawrence, who's probably the best defensive tackle in football. You just go out and get Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Bobby Okereke. The Giants have a lot of core pieces. It's just continue to kind of round out that roster and continue to push to beat the Dallases and the Philadelphias, because they are perennially just been the top teams in the conference or division.
It just doesn't have to pertain to the Giants and the Cardinals, the two teams we're talking about on the way out with Justin Pugh, but in a market like New York, I think it's more of a bigger conversation. Like, you have guys like Daniel Jones and Evan Neal. Obviously, they got to stay healthy. That's the physical part of it. But it's the mental side, too. Just kind of with your experience, what advice would you give them when people are counting you out and you got to deal with all the mental side of it instead of just the physical stuff that gets you on the field?
That's the biggest difference between a place like Arizona and a place like New York. Like the Arizona media, there's like 5 to 10 reporters in there. They typically are pretty positive. You know them. You're friendly with them. New York, you have 50 media members in there. And New York media, there's a lot more pressure playing in New York City. It takes a certain type of player to be successful in New York. It's what made Eli Manning so great for so long, the even-keeledness. But it is something that I would give any recommendation to any player to go out there and face it head on. If you play bad, say it. If you play good, say it. At the end of the day, if you don't play well and you don't play well enough for a long period of time, you will not have a job. So I treat New York differently than a lot of people would. I face it head on, and I come out and talk and joke around and have a good relationship with the media. Because in New York, if you don't give the media a story to write about you, they're going to still write one, but it might not be the one you want to be written. And that's the one piece of advice I would give to any young player. Be yourself, be honest, be open. The film doesn't lie. Everyone's going to know if you mess up or have a good game or bad. If you own it and you move forward, you're going to be successful.
Make sure you check out his podcast, Net Worth with Justin Pugh, bridging the gap between the business of the NFL and fans. Justin, appreciate the time as always, and welcome back to America, all right?
Thanks, Zach. I'll talk to you soon. Good luck with your Masters tickets.
Yeah, better luck next year is the approach I'm taking. There he is, Justin Pugh, kind enough to join us for a few minutes, talk a little Cardinals and Giants right here on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll come on back. We will talk about some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We call that segment the News Brief. But first up, here is El Capitan, Marco Belletti.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
All right, Zach, NFL training camp's getting started in a lot of places. Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo giving the leg up for the starting quarterback job to Jacoby Brissett over third overall pick Drake May, but did say it's a competition with everyone getting a chance to change things. For Brissett, a little advice for the rookie to remember as they enter camp.
No, it's no scholarships anymore. It's your job, and that's what makes it so fun. It's you get to go out there and compete every day, and you understand that somebody else is trying to take your job, and I learned that my rookie year, with the guys that I had in my room.
Of course, referring to Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo being the quarterbacks on the roster when Brissett was a rookie back in 2016. Hassan Reddick wants his money. Newly acquired Jets pass rusher has no interest in playing the final year of his contract at $14.5 million. Holding out at Jets camp in the hope of securing a new deal. Jaguars agreed to a 4-year contract, $76.5 million. That with corner Tyson Campbell. 18-game NFL schedule gaining steam. NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell told the Washington Post they've had talks on the matter, would be willing to do something before the collective bargaining agreement is up in 2030. I'm Marco Belletti.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Infinity Sports Network. That's Infinity Sports Network to follow us on Instagram.
'You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Ethos Life, the way to get life insurance in 10 minutes, up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam and just a few health questions. Get your free quote at checkethos.com. Not available in all states. Alrighty, let's start things off with the ACC Commissioner, Jim Phillips, on Florida State and Clemson's lawsuit against the ACC.
We will fight to protect the ACC and our members for as long as it takes. We are confident in this league and that it will remain a premier conference in college athletics for the long-term future. These disputes continue to be extremely damaging, disruptive, and incredibly harmful to the league. We intend to continue to fight every day for the ACC and its members, and to do so in a way that I hope makes our membership proud. The ACC will remain a healthy and vibrant conference that competes at the highest level.
Yeah, so I saw the report the other day that Florida State and Clemson, and Florida State sued the ACC 7 months ago, and you had Clemson follow in March, that they don't plan to intend to leave for the 2025 season. Like, they have to submit that by August 15th, those intentions, if they're going to do so. So I guess that's not going to happen. We know they want to leave, especially Florida State. I don't think it's a matter of if they're going to leave, it's going to be when, because of the rights agreement and this new agreement that they have. Because not only did they pay their early termination fee to get out of the ACC, which is a few $100 million, or at least $100 million, they then also had to pay the TV rights. And I was reading a few articles, and there's some discrepancies, like, there's some buyout stuff in 2027. But it seemed like it would cost, and I'm just talking about to get out, around $500 million for Florida State to leave. And that's not all these legal fees and everything like that. Like, I don't understand how you could possibly do that. That's not like, $80 million or $100 million. I'm talking about like almost $500 million. So it's like, okay, where then are Florida State and Clemson going if they do leave? Right now, reported the Big Ten and SEC don't want them. And I think the SEC not wanting Florida State is genuine. The Big Ten, I think they would want to add Florida, but right now, it doesn't seem like they're enamored with the idea. So you're really doing all this for the private equity money and the potential Big 12 that's coming? It's like, yeah, the Big 12's in a better spot right now with the ACC because they had their big brands leave earlier. But am I jumping for joy if I'm a Florida State fan or a Clemson fan going from the ACC to the Big 12? No. It kind of seems pointless for me personally. You go to the Big 10, SEC, different. But a lot of noise right now, not a lot of action. Let's go to the owner of the Bengals, Mike Brown. See, Jerry Jones is always the owner that we always play his sound, and it's always like, what the heck is he saying? That's the number one owner. Mike Brown could be too. He's not that far off. Now, I haven't heard this yet, but I'm always intrigued whenever Mike Brown opens up his mouth. But here's him talking on the contract talks, or maybe lack of them, with Jamar Chase.
He's a key player. Next to Joe, he's our next one. And he knows it. We know it. This may take a while. We are going to bend over backwards to get it done. I can't tell you when, no.
So nothing really juicy there. It just doesn't seem like anything is right around the corner. He did say in regards to T. Higgins' contract situation, you just can't pay people willy-nilly. There's always a bizarre thing or a different saying that Mike Brown will say. Let's go to Derrick Henry on the potential truth to the narrative that his body is being worn down.
No, I mean, I feel good. I mean, I don't really try to worry about that. I don't know. It's just kind of funny. Like ever since high school, sometimes I got 56 carries in the game, 57 the next week. College 44, 46, NFL 30, 35. It's just, I really think it's just your mindset and how you take care of your body, and not get too caught up on he say, she say. If it works and you feel good, and just keep working and keep doing what you do.
And even if Derrick Henry's slowing down, he's still better than a lot of running backs. You know, is he going to put up over 2,000 yards like he did in 2020? No. You know, is he going to put up 1,600 yards like what he did or close to it in 2022? No. But like last year, put up over 1,100 yards rushing. And now you have the dual threat of Lamar Jackson with Derrick Henry, the 1-2 punch. That's going to be so tough to stop. And you also have the speed of Zay Flowers as a wide receiver, Mark Andrews, who's a very good tight end. There's a lot of weapons there. So he's not going to need to be that back that he once was. But when you need him to pound the rock and get things going, I still think he's obviously more than capable of doing that. Here is Commanders coach Dan Quinn on when will Jaden Daniels start.
It's not a secret, but it is a journey and a process. And so as we're going, when he's ready, we'll know. And when he's ready, he'll also know. But as far as the reps go, obviously with him and Marcus and moving around, there'll be certain days that will feature more of another. But through practices, through scrimmages and preseason games all the way down, that's where the journey will take us. And then I'm not trying to hold back the info, but when we know, we'll say it.
Yeah, he's going to be the starting quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams, starting week 1. Jaden Daniels will start week 1. Drake May, based off what Gerard Mayo had to say, we'll get to that in just a second. Does not seem like Drake May is going to start week 1. Michael Penix Jr. will not because of Kirk Cousins there. And then Bo Nix, I do think he's going to start week 1. Did I forget anyone right there? We had Williams, Daniels, May, Penix, and Bo Nix. I think I got all of them, right? In the first round of the draft? Right? I don't know why I felt like I'm forgetting someone there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Okay. Let's get to Gerard Mayo on who's starting at quarterback heading into camp.
Coming out of the spring, I don't think there's any doubt Jacoby is the starting quarterback at this point in time. I mean, we can look at these other quarterbacks on the roster. At the same time, like it's about competition. And so when we get out on the field this summer with the pads on, we'll see how it all plays out. But coming out of the spring, I think it's clear that Jacoby is the most pro-ready guy we have. He played a lot of football.
I did forget one guy, J.J. McCarthy. I knew there was a 6. And I don't think he's going to start week 1. We just talked about that earlier in the show. So for week 1 starters, out of the 6 guys that went in the first round in the draft, first 12 picks too, I think it'll be Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix. You look at the Commanders' first 4 games, Tampa Bay, solid team. Giants stink. Bengals, very good. Cardinals, bad team. That's not a bad landing spot for Jaden Daniels the first 4 weeks of the season. So that's when we look at that. The Patriots have like a monster schedule the first 8 weeks, 9 weeks of the season. So I don't know how long they can put Jacoby Brissett out there. It feels like you're just throwing him to the wolves, which that's the role of Jacoby Brissett. Here's Joe Shane on the last effort to trade up to 3. This is the phone call that's going to air tonight on Hard Knocks with Patriots GM Elliott Wolf.
So what's going on? You guys still listening, or you guys make a decision? What are you thinking?
I think we're pretty heavy leaning that we're sitting here thinking.
Okay.
But if you it's like 1, 2, 3 this year, 1, 2 next, I mean, you know, exaggerating.
So, but I mean, it's gonna be something crazy like that.
It would probably have to be pretty significant.
Okay, so like a 1 this year, or not that obviously it'd be 6 this year, a 1 next year, and then something more this year is not going to do it. It's got to be multiples in 25.
Just we're in this situation where we just probably need to sit and pick a quarterback, you know.
Okay.
So that was Elliott Wolf saying, I'm not going to give you the answers to the test. Like, you want to make me an offer that's more than just a 6 and a future 1 and then something else, then yeah, I'll listen. But if you're not willing to do that, then I'm taking a quarterback at 3. And if the Patriots got that Godfather offer, like 3 first-round picks, then maybe they make the deal. But the Patriots get their guy Drake May. Now they got to surround him with the talent, which they didn't do for Mac Jones. And for the Giants, you have Daniel Jones there, but Daniel Jones not going to be there next year starting. And I would think Shane and Daboll will be back, but it's not a lock. If I'm running the team, I'd bring them both back. But then where are you going to be in the draft? Probably in the top 10, bottom 5. And are the quarterbacks in that draft in April going to be better than the ones that we just saw when you could have been picking 3rd overall? So that's something that now you follow. And the Giants, which they didn't deny it, right? But they did clearly, they played it up like, oh, Daniel Jones is their guy. But they knew, and you saw kind of things that were talked about in the episode where you knew that they did, and Rappaport had it. They did try to make a deal with the Patriots, but obviously did not go as far. All righty, it is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a break. When we come on back, Paul Feinbaum, he's not going to join us. And I haven't always been all that kind to Paul Feinbaum, but I gave him praise like a week ago, but now he's back to being Paul Feinbaum. I'll tell you why with something he floated out when we return.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, away we go. Hour number 3 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I will get to what Paul Feinbaum is how I'm calling him now. Threw out yesterday and why it's just crazy. So I've heard him say this before, just not to who the replacement's going to be. He is out on Lincoln Riley as the head football coach of USC. And it's funny because Paul Feinbaum believes that Lincoln Riley will not be back as the USC football coach next season. When Lincoln Riley got the job, I don't know if anybody praised the hire more than Paul Feinbaum. I don't think anyone did so. He was like, this is one of the greatest hires of all time. What a perfect fit. You know, he's going to win a championship at USC. And I'm like, hold on, wait a second. Not that I make every shot that I take, but I always thought there was a level of Lincoln Riley being overrated. Because people look at Lincoln Riley in the regular season, they're like, oh, Zach, Look what he did at Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield. And look what he did with Kyler Murray. And look what he did with Jalen Hurts just at Oklahoma, always in the college football playoff. 2 Heisman Trophy picks. 2 Heisman Trophy winners. Had 2 number 1 overall picks. Like everyone, oh, look at this, look at that with Lincoln Riley. And I'm like, okay, he coached up that talent, and that talent was awesome. Not taking anything away from Lincoln Riley. But in a 4-team playoff, how many college football playoff wins does Lincoln Riley have? 0. Goose egg. Nada. Nothing. When it comes to Lincoln Riley. So, there was also a thought that Lincoln Riley was leaving Oklahoma because he didn't want to go to the SEC. And ironically, he goes to USC, and now USC is in the Big Ten, and we know the 2 best conferences in college football are the SEC and the Big Ten. There's also people that have said Lincoln Riley, who I guess him and Brian Kelly share the same agent, through his agent was trying, these are just some of the conversation, to get out of the LSU game this year, which kicks off their season. So there is a level of Lincoln Riley not being as good as advertised. But with how the contract is set up, does anyone think after 3 years, regardless how this season goes, does anyone think USC is going to move on from Lincoln Riley? I don't. Not after 3 years. And don't get me wrong, with Caleb Williams there, who was another Heisman Trophy winner and another number 1 overall pick, did Lincoln Riley win the Pac-12? Nope. Did Lincoln Riley make the college football playoff? Nope. Like, at least at Oklahoma, you were in the college football playoff to then eventually lose and lose in the first round. But now you leave the Pac-12, which last year the Pac-12 finished with a bang. They had a tremendous conference. But now you're going into a tougher conference. And if that's true that you didn't want to go to the SEC or you're afraid of the SEC, what makes me think that that coach is going to be able to not only be good, but be great in the Big Ten? I have my doubts. But I still don't think USC is going to move off of Lincoln Riley after 3 seasons. And the first 2 years have not been good. You know, year 1, I know they didn't make the college football playoff, but it was a solid season. You win the Heisman Trophy with Caleb Williams. You go 11-3. If Williams doesn't get hurt up against Utah, you may win the Pac-12 championship. But we can't play a game of what ifs, because we could sit here all day and we could change the outcome of sporting events all throughout time. You got to evaluate with how it played out on the field. And this past year, Lincoln Riley being stubborn cost his team because he wanted to bring back his defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch. Everyone knew going into the season that was going to make USC not exceed expectations or not meet expectations. You know, I remember having a conversation with the hot take Hickey. Now, let me just say this about Hickey. As much as I like to tell Hickey his predictions are wrong, I have said this before and I'll say it again. I don't think there's a more knowledgeable person, which kind of makes it even more impressive how he gets all these predictions wrong, when it comes to talking about college football at this network than Hot Take Hickey. But Hot Take Hickey last year was like, USC is going to win the national championship. They got Lincoln Riley. He's great. Oh, they got Caleb Williams. He's unbelievable. And I said, but what about their defense? I said that to him. And eventually they got rid of Grinch because they couldn't defend his hiring anymore. To Lincoln Riley, who was like the most loyal person ever, but loyal to a fault. And loyal to his team last year wasting Caleb Williams. But with all that being said, USC is not what they were under Pete Carroll, right? When you think of USC under Pete Carroll, and Stu, you know this better than anybody being a Notre Dame fan. You think of Matt Leinart. You think of Reggie Bush, who I should have said first. You know, incredible games, incredible moments. Since then, they've been through a lot of coaches. Lane Kiffin. Sark was there, and Sark had his own issues, and that's well documented. The funny part is Clay Helton, they always wanted to run this guy out of town. His first 2 years, he was 10-3 and 11-3. And then 5-7. Then he goes 8-5. And in the short COVID season, he goes 5-1. He was brought back. And then after, I think it was like 2 games, they got rid of him. But if they let Clay Helton, who actually, and I remember saying this when I was doing weekend overnight shows, that Clay Helton is not made for USC, but he's better than what USC fans give him credit for. If they gave him, I have it here right in front of me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the start of a 6th season with Clay Helton, you don't think they're going to give Lincoln Riley the start of a 4th season? Regardless of how this year plays out. And let me tell you this, Miller Moss, I'm fascinated by him on what he's going to be this year at quarterback for USC. I don't think a lot of people are talking about him nationally. I don't. But I know it's just a bowl game, and we don't put a lot of stock in those anymore. But this guy threw 6 touchdown passes against Louisville in their bowl game. So, and you know what Lincoln Riley can do with quarterbacks. Even someone like me, who is critical of Lincoln Riley as a coach, you got to give him credit. He knows what to do with a quarterback. So I'm curious how we're talking about him and USC at the end of the season. And you may be sitting there thinking, sounds like Zach's a little optimistic about USC this year. Saying Lincoln Riley will definitely be back, talking about Miller Moss and intrigued by there. But sometimes, Stu, you know this, you could be intrigued with the team. And then it's how does the schedule break out for you? Like we talked about Nebraska the other day. And we were looking at the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And I said they're going to be improved this year. If they could just get some resemblance of a quarterback or any good quarterback play, they'll definitely be a bowl team. Because they almost were a bowl team last year, but their quarterbacks were just allergic to protecting the football and also their running backs. But they were well built in the trenches. And now you get the big, the big recruit in Raiola with his family connections, uncle offensive line coach, father, legendary offensive lineman with the program. And they were able to get him, and I hope he starts week 1. But then you look at the schedule, and it's like, oh, wow, Nebraska actually has a favorable schedule this year. Maybe they could be better than just being like a bowl team. Like, just being like a 6-win bowl team. Like, they could maybe win 8-9 games this year, Nebraska. It's not crazy to say. When you play UTEP, Colorado, which they lost to last year, Northern Iowa, Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana, Ohio State, UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Like, Wisconsin will be good. Iowa will be good. USC's a question mark. But you look at it, the only game you look at that schedule and you say, without a doubt, they can't win is Ohio State. That's it. Outside of that, I'm not saying they're going to win all the rest of their games. But every other game, they should win, or you make the case that they can win. But when you look at USC's schedule, you talk about some of the programs that Nebraska avoided. Just the Big Ten. USC kicks off the season, though, up against an SEC team in LSU. And I know LSU doesn't have Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors, but Brian Kelly is a stud in year 3 at schools when he's there. And Nussmeier, right, we've seen a little bit of him, his quarterback. But you start up the year with LSU, and you have a coach who seems like he's afraid to play LSU. That seems like LSU is going to win the game. Just from afar as we're, a few weeks out on September 1st. Then you play Utah State. Their coaching change, you should be able to beat them. Then you're at Michigan. Michigan's defense is going to bring it. Their offense is a major question mark. Wisconsin then will be improved under Luke Fickell. Then you play Minnesota, and then I think they go up against the third best team that I have the third best in the Big Ten this season, in Penn State. Just think about that. That is from September to the middle of October. You have LSU, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Penn State, 4 out of your 6 games. And then you get Utah State and Minnesota. That's not an easy schedule. Now, you eventually go on to play Maryland, Rutgers, Washington is going to be down, Nebraska, UCLA. Oh, and then, by the way, the last game of the season, Notre Dame, who has a chance to make the college football playoff this year as an independent with Marcus Freeman. So you look at that schedule, you look at Georgia last year. We all know Georgia's great. But Georgia had like a lot of these easy games, like their schedule. We like all laughed at it. We said, oh, their season will start in the SEC championship game, and they lost. But USC right now has LSU, Michigan, Penn State, Fickle's not a pushover at Wisconsin, Nebraska will be improved, and Notre Dame. You know, you want to take two teams out, fine. You got at least 4 games that are really tough on your schedule. So, maybe USC exceeds expectations because the expectations are down after Caleb Williams, but I don't think they're going to be all that good this year. But I don't think you're going to be in a spot where you're walking away saying they have to, like maybe the fans said they have to get rid of Lincoln Riley, but is the administration going to do so? I don't think so. I don't. So, let's just say I'm wrong, though. Let's say they get blown out by LSU, blown out by Michigan, blown out by Wisconsin, blown out by Penn State. And after the first 6 games of the season, like let's say it goes really bad, they're 1-5, their only wins up against Utah State, they lose to LSU, Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Minnesota. Like, that'd be bad. That'd be really bad. Like, it could go either way. Now, even if you have 2 wins there, let's say you lose to LSU, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Penn State, and you're 2-4. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly quick, but I still don't think they're going to get rid of Lincoln Riley. But let's just say, after 3 seasons, USC goes, Lincoln, you gone. Lincoln, you fired. Oh, I don't even know if you could say that these days anymore. That was an Apprentice reference back in the day. That has definitely changed throughout the years. Well, here is Paul Feinbaum on the ESPN, and he threw out a name to potentially replace. He thinks Lincoln Riley is donezo at USC after this year. And this is the name that Paul Feinbaum threw out to take over USC.
I believe the answer after this season is Deion Sanders. He's going to be tired of Colorado because, quite frankly, it's not prime time. He's done well as he can with his son and Travis Hunter and all the Stephen A's and Shannon Sharp appearances, but that's going to dry up this year because they're not going to be that great. But you put prime in Tinseltown, and I think you have one of the great combinations in history. And I think Deion Sanders, as the coach at Southern Cal, is the answer to the problems. Lincoln Riley is a good coach. He's got a great resume. Deion Sanders just exudes exactly what that community is all about. He takes the recruiting there, which Lincoln had and then lost, but I think he sustains it, especially now. Today, the Big Ten Media Days is going on with Southern Cal. And can you imagine a year from today, Deion Sanders walks into Big Ten Media Days. Everybody else, get out of the way.
I have been a huge supporter of Deion Sanders. I hope Coach Prime has a good season this year at Colorado. I don't think they're going to make a bowl game, though, this year. I still think they're going to be under 6 wins in that threshold. But to say that right now by Paul Feinbaum, like, yes, from a marketing standpoint, from an excitement standpoint, sure, Coach Prime, wow, that would be awesome at USC. But we just saw Coach Prime start off 3-0 and win 1 game down the stretch. It is amazing in the media world that we are in, which I'm a part of. And I make a ton of predictions, more wrong than right. And that definitely draws attention, that garners reaction. But there isn't a logical case right now to take anyone seriously that says Coach Prime to USC for next season before we see how this season plays out. Because even though I think Lincoln Riley is overrated as a football coach, he has produced 3 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, 4 finalists, has at least been to the college football playoff a handful of times, hasn't won, and that's why I don't think he's great. But you're going to potentially call for Deion Sanders to replace him after going 4-8 and maybe this year 5 wins, even if they get to bowl eligibility 6-6. And don't get me wrong, Colorado last year exceeded expectations from where they were before the season started. But once you started out 3-0, like I said before the year, 4 or 5 wins. But once you start out 3-0, you can only win 1 game down the stretch. And I'm not saying that Coach Prime won't get tired of Colorado, even though he says that's where he wants to be for the rest of his career, all that stuff, doesn't want to go to the NFL. But come on. Even someone that once said, if I was Auburn, instead of Hugh Freeze, I would hire Coach Prime, and I want to see him in the SEC. To suggest right now, after what we just saw from last year and how last season ended, where they were 1-8 down the stretch, 1-8. Like, what are we doing? Paul Feinbaum, when it is a big year for Lincoln Riley, but I don't think he's going to get fired this season, saying, yeah, you're going to push out Lincoln Riley for Coach Prime. From marketing, from excitement, from winning the press conference, sure. But is that going to improve your win total? Is it? Are you going to be in a better winning spot with Deion Sanders and Lincoln Riley? I have a hard time believing that, even though I've been more pro Coach Prime and I've been more negative towards Lincoln Riley throughout both of their careers as coaches. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a break. The 5 biggest questions in the Big Ten entering this season with media days underway for the Big Ten. I will get to those next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. 15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Fun continues on the Infinity Sports Network.
So I was walking around the sales room today, and I saw there was one salesperson that was in the sales pit. There was a few of them, but one did make me want to walk over to that person and have a conversation with him, and it was actually my father. So I saw my dad, who we told you, I think it was yesterday that we discussed this. I don't think it was last week. I think it was yesterday. That there's been a thief in this office, and we have seen loose change go missing, desk supplies go missing, and like some of that stuff, it's like, okay, is that really a thief or just people being forgetful and misplacing things? But then there was two items where I'm like, maybe we do have a thief. And it was a desk fan, and then it was someone went into someone's office and damaged someone's office where they like moved things around and took like drinks out of a fridge too as well. So when I walk over to my father's desk, and it was my father's desk fan that is missing, first off, he accused me. How about my own pops? He calls me up like a week ago. Did you take my desk fan? I go, one, I didn't even know you had a desk fan. And two, why would I take your desk fan? I sit in a studio that is at 67 degrees right now. Unless Ack walks over to that thing, the thermostat, and jacks it up to 73, I'm in no need of a desk fan. So I look over at my dad's desk. This is kind of a Karen moment, if we're going to be honest with everybody. There is a sign on my father's desk in all capital letters, typed out, printed out, on a piece of paper. To the person who walked off with my fan, congrats. You are the first person in my 43 years in radio who stole something from my desk. I hope you didn't make yourself visible to the security monitors. Stay cool, BG. I said to my dad, I go, it's a little Karen energy that you got there. I go, you may want to take the sign down. It's a desk fan. And if no one returns your desk fan, I will buy you a new desk fan so I don't have to hear this anymore. Because now it's getting a little embarrassing around the office that it's out. Oh, it's Zach's dad's desk fan. It's like people are coming up to me, heard your dad is distraught about his desk fan. And now it's like a joke. And I'm like, I'm on the air. There's a reputation to uphold here. You know, people are kind of laughing at you for this desk fan. And my dad's well respected around here, no doubt about it. But now it's impacting me that I have to have conversations with other coworkers about your stupid desk fan. And then he goes, oh, I didn't tell you. I found out who stole it. So I was thinking at first, he first said, I found out where my desk fan went. And I looked around his desk, there was no desk fan there. So I'm like, oh, did he just misplace it? Is he like wandering around the office and left it somewhere? Which would be a clumsy Bob Gelb thing. It was actually stolen. They found out who stole it, and that person still. You'd think if someone steals a desk fan and gets caught red-handed, they would return it, correct?
Yes.
We're sports guys, right?
Do we know who it is? Like, I would know who it is, or is this a...
I don't know if you know this person.
Okay.
It is an on-the-air person, but I don't think you would know it because it's not here at the Infinity Sports Network or down the hall at WFAN. It's with one of our other radio station clusters.
Okay.
Like, I was hoping, it was like Giannotti, or it was Boomer, or it was like Sal, or Marash, or Perloff, or Maggie, so we could have, like, fun with it. And maybe we'll have fun with this. But it is morning anchor on 10-10 Wins, Scott Stanford. If Scott Stanford was sitting right across from you, would you know that it's him? Who's a radio veteran, been around for a long, long, long time. But would you know it's him? Because that's not really in our world.
No, I know the voice, but I would not know the face.
Yeah, right? You know the voice because you heard it.
Yes.
You've heard it for so many years, but not the face. Now, he's morning, we're afternoons. I don't really know much about Scott. For example, if this was Marash, we know we could bring him on and berate him. If Scott joins us on the show, I don't know how he'll take it. And I don't want to whatever. We start a company war, so be it. But it's just one of those things where I don't really know much personally about Scott. Respect this girl, but I don't really know much about him personally. But the fact that you stole my old man's desk fan, and a source told me, a different source, not coming from my father, but someone that sits next to my father when he was there when he found out that this happened. Yeah, Scott was walking around during a commercial break. It was really hot in the 10-10 Win studio and just took the fan off the desk and brought it into his studio. But how do you not return it? And now you've been outed. It's known that you've been outed, and you still don't bring it back? Do I have to walk in to the architect, Chris Oliveira, who runs all the stations here and is a tremendous radio boss? Do I have to walk in and be like, can you tell Scott Stanford to return the freaking desk fan? Because now it's impacted me. It's impacted my mental health. I got people making fun of me around here. Oh, her dad's desk fan got stolen. That's why we got the email. And then also, my dad's still freaking out about it. I'm not kidding. This letter on his desk is ridiculous. To the person who walked off with my fan, congrats. You are the first person in my 43 years in radio who stole something from my desk. I hope you didn't make yourself visible to the security monitors. Stay cool. Enough of this desk fan. Now, Capitan Marco Belletti's just walking in. He's like a deer in headlights right now because he has no clue what we're talking about. You know that my dad's desk fan went missing.
Yes, I've heard about it.
Yes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's actually now embarrassing now because people are looking at me and they're like, dude, your old man's really bitching about a desk fan.
Why, we got another email?
No, we didn't get an email. My dad put a note on his desk today. Very Karen kind of notish. All capital letters.
Ooh.
But he found out who stole it. And it was Scott Stanford, who's the Winds morning news anchor. He was hot in the studio, took it, and never brought it back. Still hasn't brought it back, even after it was known that he was the one that stole it.
So who outed him?
That I don't know. I didn't ask my dad that. I do wonder, though, who is the rat?
Did they comb through the video surveillance?
I don't know.
Did Scott fess up and say, yeah, no, I grabbed it. I just forgot to bring it back. I'll do it tomorrow morning?
I'm not sure of all of that. Actually, now when I go back to rethink the conversation, my dad mentioned someone, I think from 10-10 Wins, and I just didn't know who they were. Maybe it was their producer or something like that on the show, or programs that said, oh, so-and-so said it was Scott. But they never brought it back. Never brought it back.
The not bringing it back is not cool. That you got to do. But I understand it was, okay, so Scott something was messed up in the studio. The air conditioning wasn't working. He asked somebody if they can grab a fan. I'm dying in here. Because when you're doing 10-10 Wins, I don't know if people know this, when you're on the news station.
Is it really hot there?
No. You don't leave. You do everything. You're playing the commercials. You're in there for the entire whatever it is, whether you got an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, you don't get to leave the studio. It's not like you're a DJ, you play a record, you walk away. It's not like us where you got a 5-minute break and they don't get to do that. So when they're anchoring and it's by themselves, they're in there for however long their anchor shift is, whether it's an hour on and an hour off or 4 straight hours. Wow. So if an air conditioning is busted, if you're in there for 4 hours, think about being, stuck in a small closet for 4 hours with that air on. So I can get, hey, somebody grab me a fan. I can get that.
Now, just going,
but you do got to bring it back.
Not that I know Scott Stanford well. I know
I've
who
met
he
him in
is.
passing. I don't know who he is. Yeah,
but hey, if we found out, and I heard Boomer was very annoyed at the Boomer size that the desk fan was missing. He was not happy. He was not happy with the.
Boomer's an integrity kind of guy.
He's a teammate guy, quarterback guy.
That's just the idea that you don't steal from each other. I mean, we're all in this thing together.
So a source told me that Boomer wasn't all that thrilled. But, if it was Boomer that took the fan, we know we could bring Boomer on and have fun with him about the whole desk fan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Scott can have fun with this now. I go to his Twitter bio, and there's, ironically, maybe he can have fun. He's doing some stand-up comedy at Gotham Comedy. So
again, I've met Scott in passing. I don't know him well other than to say hello. I've heard good things about him, though, from a lot of different people. He's been all over the place. He's done sports. He's done news. He's been on TV. He's been radio. He's been all over the place.
If I got his number and called him on the air, you think we could have a little fun with it? Hey, you got to return my father's desk fan, you coward?
I think you could. Might want to not use that word
Sorry.
right off the bat. And the fact that you haven't met him yet.
You thief, you felon.
Yeah, the fact that you haven't met him yet, you might want to start with hey, do you mind coming on? And not just throwing him on the air. You might want to lay the groundwork.
We want to call you and find out why you thought you could take my father's desk fan. Do you know I'm a large human being and I could kick your ass?
Yeah, again, start small. And I think you could probably have some fun with it. I think he seems like the type that he would enjoy the laugh.
Gotcha. Okay. It's good to
Without me knowing him personally.
Mm-hmm. Might have to sleep here tonight.
He does come in early.
Well, I'm saying I may have to sleep here. Maybe I'll sleep in. I'm going to the Met Yankee game tonight.
Okay.
Maybe I'll come back after the show, sleep in his studio, and then he'll walk in tomorrow, 5 a.m.?
No, he's on the air at 5. I see Scott in the halls at probably 3:30.
Okay. And he walks in, and you just see Zach Gelb sleeping there. Maybe waiting with a baseball bat, ready to get that desk fan.
Are you hugging the fan while you're sleeping there? You might need it.
Apparently,
it's hot in the studio.
According to you, I might need it. But yeah, we have found out who was the man that was stealing the fan. Now, I'm not accusing Scott of anything else. I just know that he stole the fan.
I was going to ask, do we know who stole the other stuff, the coins and the
That I do
drinks?
not know.
Was that from the same desk? Just curiosity?
No.
So it wasn't your father's 34 cents that were stolen?
No,
Daddy didn't care about it. He just cared about the phone?
I don't think my father would bitch a little bit about the money, but I don't. He told me it was nothing else was his. Yeah, so it was just a desk fan.
Just a fan.
That is. All
right. So now we got to find somebody else that's got random 64 cents.
Should I?
All right.
Wait, an eye for an eye? Should I then steal something of Scott Stanford's? Get a little payback?
Would you know what's his?
No, I have no clue.
I mean, what are we starting here? So now you're going to steal something from one of the other anchors at 1010 Wins?
His headphones or
maybe I write a note.
I mean, we do share studios.
Maybe
This is the Zach Gelb, studio now.
Yes.
In a few hours, it won't be.
Yeah, sure.
Same thing for the 1010 Wins.
A few hours and 30 minutes. I'm out of here.
Well, I'm just saying. It's we share. We share.
Yes. So maybe
I'm pretty sure that's not Scott's studio all day.
Okay. Maybe I write a note. And
all capital letters?
All capital letters. You
Yeah.
have 24 hours to return the desk fan. If you don't, we're going to have some problems.
That'll get it done, yeah. The note with all capital letters, that's usually a good way to get to people. That's it's not annoying, it's not jarring, it's not right in your face. And it's a good way.
Hey,
it's a good way. It's a good way.
I would not have complained about a desk fan gone missing personally. I also would not have wrote a note.
You also wouldn't have found it.
Letters.
He found his fan.
Well, no, he never got it back, though. He just found out it was stolen.
You say never. When did he find out? Today?
Found
Maybe
out
he gets
today.
it tomorrow.
I'm just saying.
I mean,
if
it's late in the day. Scott's been gone for 12 hours.
But
almost.
still, I think that means that Scott confessed and then just didn't return it. Is going to be my guess on this one.
Could be. Could be he found out about it after he got home. Hey, Scott, did you take that fan? Oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. I'll put that back tomorrow
Now,
morning.
also, here's the other thing. I'm half listening to what my dad was saying today because I just didn't really care. I was like, all right.
Usually for clarity purposes, though, you try to get the whole story.
I really hope that he just didn't throw out Scott Stanford. It was like, oh, no, Scott was the one that told me that someone stole it. If that was the case, then that would be pretty bad.
That would be pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, imagine.
That'll be an icebreaker for me when I see Scott in the halls at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, I hear you're a fan stealer.
Should I just tweet Scott Stanford an emoji of a fan?
Yeah, he'd understand.
You think so?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you could try. I think he would actually know what you're talking about? Probably not.
You got it.
I would imagine in his life, even if he found out about this fan, it would probably be a small part of today. I would think there would be other things that were going on. And he would probably forget.
I'm debating. Return the disc, man.
Well, that you might want to do. That I think he'd remember. That part of it, I think he'd remember. Now, whether or not he stole it, we still apparently don't know. So I thought we cracked a case. We apparently have no idea what the hell we're talking about.
I got to go cool off, though, and maybe go get a drink from someone's office. So we'll take a break. We'll come on back. 5 biggest questions in the Big Ten. We'll do some when we return. Update time. Here he is, El Capitan, Marco Belletti.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
Now, Zach, Jets always seem to be involved in some drama. Now they want their newly acquired pass rusher Hassan Reddick at camp. Reddick, holdout on day one, looking for a new contract. Linebacker C.J. Mosley not concerned this money matter, though, is going to trickle to the players.
I mean, when you deal with, contracts and things like that, it doesn't really get to the locker room because, we don't control that. So when he does get here, then, we'll be able to, have our 2 cents to say. But, we know he's a pro. He's been at the highest level of competition. So I'm sure whenever that gets worked out, he'll be here ready to roll.
Now, elsewhere, Jaguars agree to a 4-year deal, $76.5 million with corner Tyson Campbell, puts him into the top 10 of the highest-paid corners in the league. More and more likely, the NFL will be expanding to an 18-game schedule somewhat soon. NFL and the Players Association have had talks on the matter. NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell told the Washington Post he'd be open to adding that 18th game before the collective bargaining agreement ends in 2030. But as is anything with life, that would have to be bargained, each side getting something they want. Kevin Durant unable to play in any of the Olympic tune-up games with that strained calf. However, Durant will remain on the roster when it needs to be set later this week, and Sixers reportedly plan to sign veteran Reggie Jackson after he clears waivers following his buyout from the Hornets. I'm Marco Belletti.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. We're the Backstreet Boys, and you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh, my God. We're back again.
So 3 things contractually. We'll start with the 2 news items that we have. I don't think it's like major news. But Adam Schefter, Amari Cooper is getting a $5 million raise while the team is also guaranteeing him the $20 million currently left on his current contract. Cooper will still be entering the final year of his deal. It also means $80 million of the $100 million will have been guaranteed. Amari Cooper, by the way, we now talk about the most underrated wide receiver in football, and there's like a few answers that we give. I know he's been around for so long, and it was Keenan Allen for a while, but then everyone said Keenan Allen was overrated. So if everyone's saying you're underrated, are you really the most underrated guy? Amari Cooper's got to be right there. First 2 years were really good with the Raiders, then winds up on the Cowboys, had 2 1,100-yard seasons with the Cowboys, and then back-to-back over 1,000-yard seasons with the Browns. 1,160 yards in 2022, and then in 2023, 1,250. So, man, Amari Cooper, especially with not really having a quarterback or much of a quarterback last year with the rotating cast of characters, he's absolutely tremendous. Now, Matthew Stafford, according to Adam Schefter, Sean McVay said quarterback Matthew Stafford is reported to camp and the team is adjusting his contract. So they're adjusting his contract. Schefter adds, Stafford was due $31 million this season on the 4-year, $160 million deal that he signed after the Rams Super Bowl win. Stafford has 3 remaining years on the $40 million per year contract extension he signed in 2022 and only had $15 million guaranteed after the season. As Stafford enters his age 36 season, he was seeking more security. So there you go on that. Now, here's the juicy one. So Hassan Reddick is holding out. Like Jordan Love, he's holding in. He's there. He's present. He's just not participating in the drills until he gets a new deal. According to Connor Hughes, the Jets made Hassan Reddick a contract offer before the trade from Philadelphia. It would have been a raise from the $14.5 million he's scheduled to make this year. Reddick declined the offer. The Jets said if he wanted more, $25 to $28 million annually, they needed to see him perform first. In the meantime, the Jets would adjust his current deal, convert non-guaranteed to guaranteed and incentives. Reddick told the Jets he was on board with this. He would show up for the offseason programs, minicamp and training camps. He would perform well early season, leading as an in-season extension, similar to John Franklin Myers in 2021. Reddick then skipped OTAs, minicamp, and training camp. The Jets are not willing to negotiate anything until he shows up, and the Jets do not know when he plans on coming back. He will be fined for his absences. Now, Hassan Reddick got off to a slow start with the Cardinals. They didn't use him properly. Then, in the last 4 seasons, he's got, I think it's 50 or 50 and a half sacks to his name. So, I know he's 30. I don't think it's crazy to give him a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal. But here it says the Jets said if he wanted more than 25 to 28 million annually, I think he makes 14 and a half for this upcoming season. Now, how much is he really looking to get? Is he looking to get $30 million, Hassan Reddick? Like, no one knows Hassan in the national media probably better than me. You know, I was at his practices when he was a walk-on at Temple. You know, I'm not going to say like I'm buddy-buddy with him still, but we'll talk from time to time. And Hassan was in my car. I got him an autograph deal, one of his first autograph deals, like his first autograph deal. And I drove him to the event when he was just out of college. But if that's true, that they offered him a deal, and let's say if it's true that the Jets said if you want more than 25, 28 more annually, then you got to show up, go through the off-season programs, and then maybe we get a deal done early in the season. And that's not guaranteed, but if he agreed to that, it's like, okay, now you're going back on your word, but none of it's in writing. So it is misleading the Jets a little bit, but then it's like, only these things happen to the Jets. Like, how do you get a deal? How do you make a trade for someone that's unhappy with his contract in Philadelphia, who 2 years ago was one of the better defensive players in the league? And you know he's unhappy walking in. Even if he says yes, 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 how do you make that deal without getting the deal done? You know, getting a long-term deal done. So I think it's more on Hassan here, but just because it's the Jets, it's like, you can't let them off the hook. So we'll monitor that situation. Funny how it's not getting enough play when the Rodgers missing 2 days of minicamp was like the biggest thing in the world. So that's that. Anyway, here's my 5 biggest questions in the Big Ten entering this season. 5. Will another big brand bring it on the field? The 4 best teams in the Big Ten entering this season, in this order, in my opinion. Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, Penn State 3, Michigan 4. Will USC, will Nebraska, will a Wisconsin, be able to be a player in the Big Ten this year? Number 4, the Michigan offense. What will it be? Defensively, with Johnson and Graham, that Michigan defense is going to be one of the best units in the country, even with the players that they lost this past year from a national championship team and a 3-time Big Ten, back-to-back-to-back years team. But on offense, the line's always solid. Even when it regressed last year, that's still a tremendous offensive line for Michigan. Sherrone Moore is going nowhere right now. He's the head coach, so you know the offensive line is going to be coached up the right way. Donovan Edwards needs to be more like Donovan Edwards 2 years ago in the regular season, even though most people just remember him from what he did up against Washington in the national championship game, which was electric. But the quarterback in Alex Orji is a big question mark. So I'm a little bit in packages in the second half of the season down the stretch. But how is he going to be throwing the football? It's a major question. 3, is Oregon just stuck on being very good, or can they be great? Oregon, to me, entering this year is the 3rd best team in college football. Oregon, I think, is the one team in the Big Ten that could beat Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship this year. Penn State's going to be good. I think they'll make the playoffs. Michigan will be a playoff-worthy team. Can they beat Ohio State? Sure, but I don't think they will this year. But is Oregon just very good or great? Because last year Oregon was good. And in the Pac-12, they couldn't beat Washington, who went to the national championship game. And they lost to them twice. Now, after losing Bo Nix, you are getting Dylan Gabriel, who was in a better spot entering Eugene than where Bo Nix was. And Dan Lanning, it feels like he has Oregon humming. But are they just very good? Or can they be great and actually win a national championship? 2, will James Franklin get Penn State into the playoffs? It is playoffs or bust this year for James Franklin. I know they redid his deal not that long ago. But if James Franklin doesn't make the playoffs in a 12-team format, what is the justification for him to still be the coach at that university. Like in a 4-team playoff, you just lose to Ohio State and Michigan, and you don't make the playoff. All right, we know James Franklin is just good, not great. But now when you open it up to 12 teams, if he is still just a good coach and not a great coach, then there's going to be a lot of teams that are just good, not great, that make the 12-team playoff. And Drew Aller has to be better, and Franklin, they have to coach him better. But that's a team that should only lose 2 or 3 games a year, and that should be enough to make the playoffs. Like, they start off the season, it's tough going up against West Virginia. I think with Gilbert, and I like what Neil Brown could do, that's going to be a game better than what people expect. But after that, you have Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, tough game against Ohio State, Washington, Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland. Outside Ohio State, I'm not even saying that, Ohio State is a gimme for Ohio State. It's not. But there's not a game on the schedule, include Ohio State too, even though I think Ohio State will win, that you say, Penn State can't win this year. And then in at number 1, will Ryan Day get the job done? Just beating Michigan, for me, isn't enough. Like, if the Ohio State fan is going to throw a parade for just beating Michigan, then Ryan Day's not the right guy for the job, even though he only has 8 losses in his career as the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. But you have a team that Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel talk about how loaded they are with talent. You got to get the job done and not only win the Big Ten this year, but you got to find a way to be in the national championship game and win the national championship. Because you could be the best team in college football. You could be. Right now, I think you're the second best with Georgia being 1. But it's not out of the realm of possibilities to say that Ohio State wins it all this year. But it's a mental toughness factor that they've lacked the last 3 years. And Ryan Day, when the games get bigger, he crumbles, even though he only has 8 losses to his name as the Ohio State coach. All righty, fun show today. Big thanks to Moist Mike. Big thanks to Stuart Kovacs. Big thanks to Marco Belletti, each and every one of you for interacting and tuning in to the program, whether it's on one of your local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, or streaming live on YouTube. And a big thank you to Justin Pugh for joining us to talk a little Arizona Cardinals and the New York Football Giants. We will be back mañana at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.